My brothers and sisters in Islam, today we embark on a journey into one of the most profound and fearful signs of the last day, the emergence of Al-Masih Dajjal. His story is not just a tale to be narrated, but a warning, a test, and a call to prepare ourselves spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. The greatest trial in history will be the emergence of Dajjal, as warned by the Prophet. And this reality is something every Muslim must deeply internalize. Throughout human history, countless trials and tribulations have tested the faith of believers, from natural disasters and oppressive rulers to false prophets and corrupt ideologies. Yet none of these can compare to the magnitude and intensity of the fitna of Al-Masih Dajjal. The Prophet described it in many authentic narrations, emphasizing repeatedly that there will be no trial greater from the time of Adam until the day of judgment. This warning itself tells us that Dajjal's appearance is not just another event in the timeline of the last days. It is the ultimate test that will separate the sincere believers from those whose faith is superficial and weak. What makes this trial so severe is the combination of deception, power, and influence that Dajjal will possess. He will not come with mere lies. He will perform extraordinary acts that will appear miraculous to those who are easily swayed. He will make rain fall, cause vegetation to grow, and seemingly bring the dead back to life. These are abilities that people associate with divinity, and through them, he will claim lordship over mankind. Those who do not have firm knowledge of Allah and his attributes may begin to doubt, while those whose faith is built only on tradition and not conviction may crumble under the weight of his illusions. This is why the Prophet urged us to learn about Dajjal and to seek refuge from his trial in every prayer, highlighting that preparation begins long before he arrives. Another reason this trial is so unparalleled is its global reach. In previous eras, trials were often localized, affecting specific nations, tribes, or regions. Dajjal's deception, however, will extend across the entire earth. He will travel swiftly, spreading his message and attracting followers from all corners of the world. His words will be broadcast far and wide, and his influence will be irresistible to those who lack spiritual grounding. The world, as it is today, is already interconnected, and this connectivity makes it easier for falsehood to spread rapidly. This interconnectedness will serve as a tool in Dajjal's hands, allowing him to reach into homes and hearts with frightening speed. Moreover, the psychological dimension of his trial will be immense. Humanity has always been drawn to power, wealth, and solutions to their problems. Dajjal will exploit this by presenting himself as the one who can end suffering, heal the sick, and bring prosperity. In times of desperation, many will turn to him, overlooking the clear signs of his falsehood. The trial, therefore, will not only test knowledge, but also patience, trust, and resilience. It will ask believers whether they are willing to endure hardship for the sake of truth or abandon their principles for temporary comfort. The Prophet did not warn us of Dajjal to frighten us, but to prepare us. He taught us that the best defense is strong faith. Faith that is unshakable even when the entire world seems to bow to falsehood. He advised reciting certain verses from the Qur'an, strengthening our connection with Allah through Salah, and nurturing a deep understanding of Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, so that no false claim to divinity can ever mislead us. It is through this preparation that believers can face even the greatest trial with confidence and clarity. Reflecting on this, it becomes clear why Dajjal's fitna is considered the greatest. It is not only because of the scale of deception or the power he will wield, but because it strikes at the very core of faith, our recognition of Allah as the only Lord and Sustainer. This trial is designed to shake that belief, to blur the line between Creator and creation, and to challenge humanity's loyalty to divine truth. Those who emerge victorious from this test will not just be survivors, they will be among the strongest believers, those whose hearts are anchored in certainty and whose trust in Allah is unbreakable. Understanding the gravity of Dajjal's trial should not lead us to despair or fear. Instead, it should motivate us to seek knowledge, purify our intentions, and strengthen our relationship with Allah. It should inspire us to live with awareness and purpose, knowing that faith is not merely a claim, but a shield we must continuously sharpen. And when the time comes, whether we witness this trial or not, the believers who have prepared themselves will stand firm, knowing that no deception, no illusion, and no false miracle can ever compete with the truth of Allah. This is why the emergence of Dajjal is the greatest trial in history. Not because of the power he holds, but because of the power it requires from us to remain true. Dajjal's weapon is not brute force, but deception that confuses truth with falsehood. And this is the very essence of why his trial is considered the most severe. Unlike tyrants who rely on armies, oppression, and violence to impose their will, Dajjal will use something far more dangerous, the manipulation of perception. He will not come to crush people with swords or chains. Instead, he will attack the hearts and minds of humanity, planting seeds of doubt, distorting reality, and presenting lies so convincingly that many will accept them as truth. This subtle yet powerful strategy is far more destructive than brute force, because physical oppression can strengthen faith, but deception can weaken it from within. When we think about deception, it is important to realize how it plays on human weakness. People are naturally drawn to what they see, what they hear, and what appears tangible in front of them. Dajjal will exploit this tendency, performing acts that defy logic and reason, displaying miracles that seem divine, and creating illusions so powerful that even those who once believed firmly may begin to question. The Prophet A described how he will command the sky to rain, and it will rain, or command the earth to produce vegetation, and it will respond. He will appear to have control over the provisions people desperately seek, and in doing so, he will deceive countless souls into believing he holds divine power. The reality, however, is that everything he does is a test from Allah, and nothing he presents is the truth of lordship or divinity. The danger of such deception lies in its ability to blur the line between falsehood and truth. When someone comes with brute force, it is easier to recognize them as an oppressor. But when someone appears as a savior, a miracle worker, and a bringer of prosperity, it becomes far more challenging to resist. Many will see him as a solution to their struggles rather than a destroyer of their souls. This is the essence of fitnah: to make something harmful appear beneficial and to disguise destruction in the clothing of salvation. It is why the Prophet A emphasized that those who lack knowledge of Allah's attributes and his absolute oneness will be the easiest prey for Dajjal's deception. They will see signs and be blinded by them, unable to discern that these so-called miracles are nothing more than illusions designed to mislead. We can already see glimpses of this method in the world around us today. Deception has become a powerful tool in shaping societies, controlling opinions, and even redefining morality. Lies are dressed as truths, corruption is hidden behind polished speeches, and immorality is rebranded as freedom. These smaller deceptions prepare the human mind to accept larger ones. If people today are quick to believe what they see on a screen without questioning its authenticity. Imagine how vulnerable they will be when Dajjal presents illusions that seem to bend the laws of nature itself. If our faith is not rooted in knowledge and certainty, the distinction between truth and falsehood will blur, leaving us exposed to his trap. What makes deception more powerful than force is that it leads people willingly into submission. A tyrant can make people obey out of fear, but their hearts may remain resistant. Dajjal, however, will aim for the heart itself. By deceiving people into thinking he is a savior, he will make them submit out of admiration and hope. This voluntary submission is far more dangerous because once the heart accepts falsehood as truth, it no longer resists. It embraces it. That is why this trial is unique and terrifying. It requires not only external resistance, but deep internal clarity to withstand. The Prophet taught us the tools to resist this weapon of deception. He emphasized that we must know Allah well enough to never confuse creation with the Creator. He instructed us to seek refuge from the fitnah of Dajjal in every salah, because only Allah can protect us from such overwhelming illusion. He encouraged us to memorize the opening verses of Surah Al-Kahf, as these words are a light against darkness, reminders of truth against falsehood. These instructions show us that the only way to defeat deception is with clarity of faith, knowledge, and remembrance of Allah. The lesson here is profound. The greatest danger to a believer is not physical harm, but confusion of the heart. Dajjal's power lies in his ability to make people see what is not real, to believe in what contradicts divine truth, and to trade their eternal salvation for temporary comfort. Those who prepare themselves with strong Iman, who understand that Allah alone holds power over creation, will not be swayed. They will see through the lies, even if the entire world around them is deceived. And this is what makes Dajjal's weapon so frightening, yet also so revealing. It will expose the true state of every heart, separating those who cling to Allah's truth from those who are easily swayed by illusions. In the end, Dajjal's deception will prove that the strongest shield is not physical might, but unwavering faith and knowledge. Brute force can be resisted by courage, but deception can only be resisted by clarity of belief. That is why his weapon is more dangerous than armies and weapons, and why the Prophet warned us so urgently to prepare ourselves. Modern deceptions are preparing the world to accept his falsehood. Faith must be strengthened now, because what Dajjal will bring will not appear completely foreign to humanity. It will be the culmination of a mindset, a conditioning process that has been unfolding across generations. Today we live in a time where truth is often blurred, falsehood is celebrated, and morality is reshaped according to human desires rather than divine revelation. This environment is not accidental. It is part of the broader fitnah that prepares hearts and minds to easily accept the deception of Al-Masih Dajjal when he finally emerges. The world is being primed, step by step, to normalize lies that once would have been instantly rejected, and to embrace illusions as though they were undeniable realities. Consider the age of technology and media that surrounds us today. Never before in human history have images, words, and fabricated realities had such influence over billions of people simultaneously. A single narrative can be spread across the globe in seconds, and people accept it without question, simply because it is repeated and reinforced by authority figures or popular culture. With advancements in virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and digital manipulation, the line between real and unreal grows thinner every day. If humanity is already struggling to distinguish between truth and illusion in these times, How will it cope when Dajjal presents miracles that bend the laws of nature and realities that no screen or device can explain away? This conditioning of the mind is one of the clearest signs that his deception will not be difficult to swallow for those unprepared. Another layer of this preparation lies in the way falsehood is now presented as liberation. We see societies abandoning divine guidance and adopting man-made laws that directly contradict Allah's commands. Yet these changes are celebrated as progress and enlightenment. Concepts once recognized as harmful are rebranded as freedoms, and values rooted in revelation are dismissed as outdated or restrictive. This inversion of morality is exactly the kind of environment Dajjal will thrive in. When he presents his false promises of prosperity, equality, and solutions to global suffering, people already accustomed to rejecting divine boundaries will flock to him without hesitation. They will see him as a visionary rather than a deceiver because their hearts have been conditioned to prefer convenience and worldly gain over truth and eternal salvation. Materialism also plays a major role in this conditioning. Humanity is increasingly driven by desire for wealth, possessions, and comfort. People are willing to compromise principles and faith for the sake of luxury and ease. Dajjal's deception will exploit this weakness directly. He will control food, water, and resources, offering them to those who follow him and depriving those who resist. If today people compromise their deen for small gains or out of fear of losing status and wealth, how many will withstand the temptation when their very survival seems to depend on obeying him? This attachment to dunya makes the heart weak, and unless faith is prioritized over worldly comfort, many will fail the test. The current global culture also glorifies personalities and leaders, giving them almost godlike admiration. Celebrities, politicians, and influencers shape people's identities and beliefs, often more than religious leaders or scholars. This obsession with human figures makes society ripe for following a false messiah. When Dajjal presents himself as a savior, people conditioned to idolize humans will not hesitate to pledge allegiance to him. The culture of hero worship today is a rehearsal for the mass submission that will occur in his time. Yet, despite this bleak picture, the Prophet A gave us hope and tools to resist. He did not describe these signs to frighten us into despair, but to awaken us to action. The Quran remains the ultimate source of clarity, the criterion that distinguishes truth from falsehood. Daily recitation, reflection, and application of the Quran in our lives will sharpen our ability to see through deception. Salah anchors the believer's heart, reminding us 5 times a day that our true refuge is only Allah, not any human or illusion. Dua, especially the supplication for protection from the fitnah of Dajjal recited in every salah, builds a shield around the heart, reminding us that Allah alone grants protection. Strengthening faith now means building resilience before the storm arrives. It means training ourselves to resist small deceptions so that we can resist the greater one. It means prioritizing Allah's commands even when society mocks them, refusing to compromise our deen for fleeting comforts, and teaching our families to value eternal truth over temporary satisfaction. By doing this, we prepare not only for the deception of Dajjal, but for every test of life, because the essence of his trial is simply the climax of what humanity faces daily. The struggle between truth and falsehood. Modern deceptions are, in reality, warnings and reminders that the great deceiver will one day appear. The blurred lines we see today should serve as a wake-up call, urging us to strengthen our hearts with certainty in Allah and His Messenger. The choice is clear. Either we condition ourselves to cling to divine truth, or we allow ourselves to be conditioned by the world to accept lies. Those who invest in their faith now will, by Allah's mercy, recognize Dajjal's falsehood instantly, while those who neglect their faith will find themselves swept away by his illusion. This is why the time to prepare is not tomorrow, but today, because the world is already paving the path for his deception. Clinging to Qur'an and Salah is the believer's shield against the fitnah of Dajjal, and this truth is not only a guidance for the future, but a necessity for our present lives. When the Prophet warned us about Dajjal, he did not leave us without weapons to defend ourselves. He gave us clear instructions that the Qur'an and Salah are not just rituals but powerful tools of protection, capable of shielding the heart from the strongest deceptions and anchoring the soul when the storms of falsehood rage around us. These two acts of worship are the foundation of faith, and without them, the believer is exposed, vulnerable, and unarmed in the face of the greatest trial humanity will ever see. The Quran is described by Allah as a light, a guidance, and a criterion. Light removes darkness, guidance shows the path, and a criterion separates truth from falsehood. This is exactly what will be needed when Dajjal emerges with his lies wrapped in miracles. His deception will be so convincing that many people will confuse falsehood with truth. Yet the Quran has the power to cut through that illusion. The Prophet recommended reciting the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf as a specific shield against Dajjal's fitnah. These verses speak about the story of the people of the cave who held firmly to their faith despite being pressured to abandon it. Their story mirrors the trial of Dajjal, reminding believers that salvation comes not from following the masses or submitting to worldly pressure, but from clinging to faith in Allah with patience and sincerity. The Quran, when recited with reflection and applied in daily life, builds a mindset that can recognize deception for what it is and remain firm in truth, no matter how attractive falsehood appears. Salah, on the other hand, is the believer's direct connection to Allah. It is not simply a series of movements, but a lifeline that renews faith 5 times a day. The Prophet describes Salah as a shield, and in the context of Dajjal, this shield becomes vital. Every time we stand before Allah in prayer, we acknowledge His oneness, His ultimate authority, and His control over all creation. This daily reminder imprints on the heart a certainty that no false claimant to divinity, no matter how powerful, can ever replace Allah. Salah also includes a specific dua taught by the Prophet where we seek refuge in Allah from the fitnah of Dajjal. By repeating this supplication daily, the believer not only seeks divine protection, but also trains the mind and heart to remain vigilant against his deception. Together, Quran and Salah nurture a type of faith that is both intellectual and spiritual. The Quran equips the believer with knowledge and clarity, while Salah strengthens the connection with Allah and builds spiritual resilience. Without Quran, the believer may lack the understanding to distinguish truth from falsehood. Without Salah, the believer may lack the strength to act upon that understanding. But with both, the believer carries light in the mind and strength in the heart, becoming someone who is not easily shaken by illusions or temptations. Reflecting on our current lives, we can see how abandoning Quran and Salah leaves people vulnerable even to the small deceptions of this world. A heart that does not recite or reflect upon the Quran is easily swayed by trends, ideologies, and popular opinions. A person who neglects Salah often feels empty, restless, and unprotected, drawn to worldly attractions in search of fulfillment. If such neglect leaves us exposed to minor deceptions, how much greater will the danger be when faced with the fitna of Dajjal? This is why the Prophet did not tell us to prepare with weapons or strategies of war, but with Quran and Salah, because the real battle will be for the heart and mind. Clinging to Quran and Salah also means more than just performing them mechanically. It means immersing oneself in the meanings of the Quran, letting its verses transform thought and action, and approaching Salah with sincerity, humility, and devotion. A person who prays but does not reflect, or who recites but does not implement, may not gain the full protection these acts offer. The shield is strongest when these acts are performed with sincerity and consistency, for Allah protects those whose worship is genuine. The trial of Dajjal will be short-lived compared to eternity, but its impact will be immense. Only those who are firmly grounded in Quran and Salah will have the inner strength to resist when others are swayed. These practices are not only preparation for that great trial, but also for every test we face in this dunya. They teach us patience when life is difficult, clarity when society confuses right and wrong, and hope when despair surrounds us. If they can protect us from the small fitan we face daily, they will surely protect us from the greatest fitna of all. To cling to Quran and Salah is to anchor oneself in truth, to carry light in a world of darkness, and to wield a shield that no deception can penetrate. They are not just habits of worship, but lifelines for survival in the age of trials. Those who hold firmly to them will stand firm, even when the world bows to falsehood. And by Allah's mercy, they will be among those who triumph over the deception of Dajjal. The trial of Dajjal will expose the weak-hearted and elevate those firm in their faith, because it is in the face of great tribulation that the true condition of the heart becomes clear. A person may live their entire life outwardly appearing to be a believer, praying, fasting, and engaging in acts of worship, but when the storm of deception arrives, only those whose faith is deeply rooted will remain steadfast. Dajjal's fitna is unlike ordinary tests. It will not simply challenge patience or endurance, but it will strike at the very core of belief, questioning the loyalty of people to Allah, the unseen truth of revelation, and the unseen realities of the hereafter. Those who have only built their faith on the surface without strengthening their inner conviction will find themselves unable to withstand the weight of his deception. The weak-hearted will be those who relied on tradition without conviction, who followed Islam because of environment or family rather than knowledge and sincerity. They may have performed rituals, but their hearts were not firmly anchored in Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. When Dajjal arrives and presents extraordinary signs, raining down provisions, healing the sick, even claiming to bring the dead back to life, these weak souls will not be able to differentiate between illusion and reality. Their desire for quick solutions, comfort, and worldly benefit will make them easy prey. They will be swept away because their faith was never strong enough to resist temptation or to question the apparent in favor of the unseen truth that Allah alone is in control. At the same time, this trial will elevate those firm in their faith, believers who nurture their Iman through knowledge, worship, and reliance on Allah will stand as pillars of clarity in the midst of global confusion. Their hearts will not be shaken by miracles that contradict divine guidance, because they know that no one besides Allah has true power over life, death, and provision. When the masses flock to Dajjal in desperation, these believers will stand apart, not because they are physically stronger, but because their certainty in Allah shields them from doubt. Their refusal to submit to falsehood will expose their inner strength and purity of faith, raising them in the sight of Allah. This dynamic of exposure and elevation is consistent with the sunnah of Allah in all trials. Hardship reveals who people truly are. Just as fire purifies gold and exposes impurity, the trial of Dajjal will purify humanity, separating those who merely claim belief from those who live it sincerely. The Prophet warned us that the fitnah of Dajjal will reach every place and touch every heart. Yet he also reassured us that those who cling to Allah and His guidance will be protected. In this way, Dajjal becomes not only a source of fear, but also a means by which the strongest believers will be distinguished. For the weak-hearted, the test will highlight the consequences of neglecting preparation. If a person does not seek knowledge of Allah, if they neglect Salah, if they treat the Qur'an as mere recitation rather than a guide, they leave themselves vulnerable. The trial will not create weakness, it will only expose it. Similarly, for the strong, the trial will not magically create strength. It will reveal the result of years of nurturing faith, building trust in Allah, and committing to worship even when the world pulls in the opposite direction. It is also important to understand that firmness of faith does not come overnight. It is not a switch that can be turned on when the trial begins. It is built day by day through conscious effort, resisting smaller temptations, standing for truth even when unpopular, and prioritizing Allah's commands over worldly desires. Every small act of obedience strengthens the heart, and every compromise for the sake of dunya weakens it. By the time Dajjal emerges, hearts will already be conditioned either toward resilience or toward surrender. The weak-hearted will fall because they seek immediate relief, but the firm will rise because they value eternal salvation over temporary comfort. The weak will chase miracles without understanding their source, but the strong will trust the unseen promises of Allah over the visible illusions of Dajjal. The weak will look for solutions in human claims, while the strong will anchor their hope in Allah alone. This keynote teaches us that the trial of Dajjal is not only about survival, but about exposure and elevation. It will strip away pretenses, forcing people to show their true allegiance. Those who are weak will be exposed for their lack of preparation, and those who are strong will be elevated as examples of true faith. This reality should not frighten us into despair, but motivate us to invest in our Iman now. The time to strengthen the heart is before the trial, not during it. The trial is only the unveiling. The real work must be done today. In the end, the trial of Dajjal will be remembered as a moment in history when humanity was divided not by wealth, power, or status, but by the strength of the heart. Some will collapse under the weight of deception, while others will shine with the light of certainty. And it is those elevated by faith who will be honored by Allah, proving that even the greatest trial cannot shake a heart firmly attached to its creator. Awareness of Dajjal's reality is not meant to instill fear, but to awaken spiritual readiness. And this is a crucial distinction that every believer must understand. When the Prophet he spoke so often about Dajjal, he did not intend to terrify his companions into hopelessness. Rather, his purpose was to inform them, to equip them, and to ensure that their hearts would be alert to the danger when it arrived. Fear alone can paralyze a person, but awareness transforms that fear into preparation, and preparation becomes the key to survival. Thus, learning about Dajjal should not lead to despair, but to a heightened sense of responsibility to strengthen our connection with Allah, refine our faith, and cultivate the resilience necessary to withstand the greatest deception in human history. Fear without awareness is destructive because it leaves a person overwhelmed and helpless. But awareness builds perspective. It clarifies why Dajjal's fitnah will be so severe and how a believer can protect themselves. The Prophet A described Dajjal in vivid detail, his physical features, the illusions he will bring, and the places he will travel. This was not for the sake of storytelling, but so that his ummah would recognize him instantly, without hesitation. For example, the Prophet A said that kafir will be written on Dajjal's forehead, visible to every believer, whether literate or not. Such details are reminders that awareness brings clarity, and clarity leads to confidence, not panic. Awareness also redirects the believer's mindset from passive waiting to active readiness. Too often, people imagine that when Dajjal comes, Allah will automatically protect them because they call themselves Muslims. But the reality is that protection is tied to effort. Awareness teaches us that the shield against Dajjal lies in reciting Surah Al-Kahf, in performing salah sincerely, and in seeking refuge from his fitnah in our du'as. Without this awareness, believers may neglect these actions and find themselves spiritually unarmed. Just as an army cannot win a battle without training beforehand, a believer cannot hope to stand against Dajjal without preparing through faith and practice long before his arrival. Another dimension of awareness is that it awakens us to the many deceptions that surround us today. Dajjal's trial will not appear in isolation. Rather, it will be the peak of a long history of smaller trials that prepare people to accept him. By being aware of Dajjal, we start to see the patterns of deception already in motion, false ideologies, twisted morality, illusions of materialism, and the glorification of human power. Awareness makes us vigilant, training us to resist falsehood in its smaller forms, so that when the greatest deceiver appears, our hearts are already conditioned to reject him. In this way, awareness acts as a light in the present as much as it does a shield for the future. Spiritual readiness is not only about rituals, it is about cultivating certainty in Allah. Awareness of Dajjal reminds us that only Allah controls life, death, and provision. No matter what powers Dajjal appears to wield, they are nothing but illusions allowed by Allah as a test. When a believer internalizes this awareness, they develop an unshakable trust in their Creator, a trust that cannot be swayed by appearances. This kind of readiness transforms fear into confidence, because the believer knows that no matter how strong Dajjal's deception looks, the truth of Allah is stronger. Furthermore, awareness brings balance. Some people dismiss the topic of Dajjal, thinking it is too distant or irrelevant, while others obsess over it to the point of anxiety. The correct approach lies in the middle, being mindful without being fearful, being alert without being consumed. The Prophet I spoke of Dajjal frequently, but he also emphasized other aspects of faith, reminding his companions that life must continue with worship, good deeds, and service to others. Awareness of Dajjal, therefore, should not cause us to withdraw from life, but rather to live with a stronger sense of purpose, knowing that everything we do is preparation for the final tests of this world. This readiness is not limited to individuals, but extends to families and communities. Parents who are aware of Dajjal will raise their children with stronger foundations in faith, teaching them to question falsehood and cling to the Qur'an. Communities that are aware will encourage collective worship, education, and remembrance of Allah, building resilience together. Awareness thus becomes a collective defense, ensuring that when Dajjal's trial arrives, it does not find people isolated and weak, but united and strong. Ultimately, awareness of Dajjal's reality transforms fear into motivation. It reminds us that the greatest trial is not meant to break believers, but to test their sincerity. It shows us that preparation is possible, that Allah has given us the tools we need, and that victory lies with those who stay firm, far from causing despair. This awareness should awaken hope and determination, because it affirms that even in the face of the greatest deception, Allah's guidance remains clear, and His protection is always near. In truth, the knowledge of Dajjal is not a burden, but a mercy, because it gives us the chance to prepare before the time comes. And for the believer who embraces this awareness, the fitnah of Dajjal will not be a cause for fear, but an opportunity to stand firm, to prove loyalty to Allah, and to rise in honor when the world is consumed by illusion.